Hello, hello. Welcome to Healthy Perspectives, a podcast that takes on current cultural and social issues through a clinical lens. Hello, hello. All right. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate your time. And boy, oh boy, being away for the last couple of weeks, what a good time to be away. It has been a fun environment to observe as a little less of a participant than I typically am. Poop hit the fan. Everybody's a little messy now. How do we know that? Man, this stuff's going on about the tariffs, the market collapsing, deportations. Whew, there's a lot going on, folks. So without further ado, the tip of the day, you never actually knew what was coming anyway. So stop panicking. Okay. That seems like pretty harsh tip of the day, maybe for some of you. But the reality is it was never as predictable as you thought it was. It just wasn't. We don't know what tomorrow brings. And today I'm going to give you some outlines, a couple of little very surfacey explanations of a couple of theories that I want you to explore. If you're so willing, you can put these into, your favorite chat, your favorite search engine, or your AI devices, whatever it is. And you will inevitably learn some things, as I did when I learned these things. So here, I'm going to start you with this. I am assuming that control is more of a myth than reality. Okay, so that is an assumption. I'm being really honest with you. It is an assumption that I am making. So if that's the case, why would it be a myth more than a reality? We really go to two theories that I'm going to present to you. One is structuration theory, and the other is symbolic interactionism. Okay. They're really not that complicated. They're big, long words because really smart people, smarter than me, really enjoy giving you these complicated terminology. But they're actually not that difficult. Structuration, man, my words today. The structuration theory comes from this concept that structure comes through adapting to new information every single day. So it's an adaptation kind of a theory. In other words, when today something new happens, I go, ooh, new information to put into the calculation. I put it into the calculation, and voila, I spit out a new idea of what tomorrow could potentially be. In other words, the infinite possibilities of tomorrow are based on the new information that I get today. Okay. That is a basic concept, and predictability then becomes based on whatever new information came today. Now there's some limitations to these theories. So let me just give you a quick heads up. One of the limitations there that I can see as a social science guy is that I'm always going to have to be up to date on the most current, newest thing in order to predict the future. But some things have been predictable for a very long time, and they remain predictable. So it's not necessarily all new information that has to be considered, because there are things that we call anomalies. It's hard to see anomalies in the structuration theory. Not impossible. Like if you get into the theory, you'll see where they have some caveats and some space for that. But that is one of the more challenging sides of that theory. The second one, which was the symbolic interactionism. If the future is a blank slate, right? In other words, we have less control than we actually perceive ourselves to have. It's a blank slate. There is nothing written on tomorrow until tomorrow comes, right? If the future is a blank slate, we can only form meaning based on the past or the present. and this one's called symbolic interactionism because they suggest that language, that past interactions, all of those are symbolic in the way they store within us. And so, super interesting theories. I encourage you to go out and take a look at them, but we're going to put them into play here for a second. We're going to put them into play regarding the tariffs, the markets, and the deportations. Okay. So let's start with the tariffs. Adapting to new information. Well, the new information is the administration has put these tariffs in place. That's new information. If we take that information and we say, okay, now this new information is here, so I have to start from this premise, then all the previous premises don't matter nearly as much. So set those aside and say, new information says this. What it does is it allows us to get to a point of acceptance much more quickly. Instead of fighting what was, let's deal with what is. Okay, so that's where the structuration theory allows us to say, okay, here's the new information, acknowledge it, and what do we do with it now? Perfect. Okay, the next piece is the blank slate, symbolic interactionism, and that says we're going to blank slate tomorrow, and what we're going to do is look back at what was, at now what is, and say, what is predictable about tomorrow? What is there that I can say is actually relatively predictable? Well, that's where the tariffs get real tricky, folks. We've only had like what, 2 or 3 times in our history, and we're a young country. So we have to now look at other countries and how other countries tariff stuff. And we look how the United States has historically under tariffed based on the global economy, the way that the other countries have historically done it. Okay, well, that's information. We then look at this new information saying, are we going to a massive overkill? I mean, based on the way other countries have historically done it, probably. And, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, tomorrow is a blank slate. And since we are in new territory, we don't really know. So, functioning from these two theories, what we can say is we don't know what's going to happen with the tariffs. But what we can also do is we can say, let's break this down just a little bit further in the panic mode that people have gone into. And we know that because of the markets. All right. So the panic mode, historically, has that been beneficial? Your knees get wobbly. You're standing on a high platform. You don't really want your knees wobbly. Panic is not going to serve you well there. Rarely has panic ever been historically a good thing. And that would be that symbolic interactionism, right? The new information suggests, we don't really have much new information about panic except, as a country, we are encountering a little bit new information regarding panic about tariffs. But it's not really new. The whole idea of panic isn't there. There's nothing in panic that's new that I can see. So it would suggest, wow, panic is not helpful. So all these people that are freaking out and, pretending that they should have made other moves or, like pulling all their money out of the markets. And well, I'll show you how that's silly as we transition into the market section. Watch this. In the structuration theory, we go back and we go, oh, what's the new information? The new information is there's tariffs. The markets are collapsing because people are freaking out. But let's look at the market as a whole. When's the last time the market collapsed, completely collapsed? We could go back to the Great Depression. We could go back to the housing bubble in, 2011. There's been other times where this has occurred. And what happened to the market? It came bouncing back. why would anybody have the need to, like, if that is the, we look at that symbolic interactionism and we look at structuration theory, when we do that and we see, holy smokes, why would we yank all of our money out of it? Now, I'll tell you who's going to yank money out. I'm going to be honest with you here. So hang on, hang on. People who have a ton of money, like a lot, like more than the average person, more than you and me probably have, they will yank a bunch of money out of it to let it collapse. As other people freak out, maybe 3 months, 4 months from now, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to take that money. They're going to reinvest it into that market that they were like, oh, don't you should just pull out and now and buy gold and do this. And I'm not saying those are all bad ideas necessarily, but let me be clear. What they are going to do is later on, they are going to reinvest in the market because that's a good way for them to make a ton of money. If the market drops 20, 30, 40%, 50%, they get out at a loss of 10%. They get back in at a loss when it's down 50%. And now all of a sudden it climbs back and then exceeds. They've made 50, 60 plus percent. People with lots of money can play that game. You and me, our best move, let's be real. Don't buy their panic. Their false panic. Why? Because if you get out, then they get it cheap. If you stay in, then in order for them to buy back in, they have to buy from other rich people who have done that or the people who have panicked. Okay. So if you take away the people who have panicked because you don't panic and you wait it out, then they're not getting rich off of you. They're getting rich off of other rich people who freaked out. Okay. I mean, if they want to take money from each other, go do your thing. But sit it out. And, according to the structure we're putting in place here, the structuration theory, what's new about the market? Nothing. Markets go up and down. Nothing new here. The only new piece is the tariffs, which we already talked about. But we know that over time, markets recover and continue upward. Okay. So there's nothing within the market that suggests you should panic. Let's be real. If the market completely collapses and goes down to zero, I mean, we got much bigger things to worry about than, the 50,000 or 200,000 or even $500,000 that you had in there. Way more things to worry about than that, because I mean, honestly, at that point, we're probably thinking, wow, glad we got gun rights in this country. And holy smokes, don't come to my house because it's going to be chaos. Way worse than this. Way worse. Okay. Let's switch gears, folks. This next one is a little bit more of a leap. All right. Deportations. If we take the structuration theory, remember again what that is. We're taking the new info of the day to look at what might happen tomorrow. Deportations are a little tricky because the new information is that's going on in there. I'm hearing people saying that little kids are being detained and they're being sent away or these things. The most recent one I heard was a principal in a school put together a media letter saying that some third grader was taken into custody. I don't have all the details, but deportations are not new. They're not. There's nothing new about deporting people that are in any country. Every country does a form of deportation. What's seemingly new is the mistakes that are made are deporting people to places where they don't belong, or they are deporting people who shouldn't be deported. Um, and these are one-off stories. Now, that doesn't mean they're not significant. But if we're looking at the new information, there's nothing new about deportation, other than it's being what we've had times in history where deportation was being implemented, and the laws and the rules and the guidance around that have been there. So there's really nothing new going on there. Nothing, like zero new information. Um, there are new stories, but the process isn't new. There's nothing new about it. Okay. So let's take a look at the symbolic interactionism aspect, which is tomorrow's a blank slate, and we form the meaning based off of the past and the present. If we look back historically at stories of deportation, and then we look at the present stories of deportation, there are some differences that might come out of there. ICE is much more active right now than it has been in a while. So that's some new bit of information. And what does that mean? And how do we paint the slate of tomorrow with that new bit of information? Um, here's where I would caveat and say there's two real classifications historically where deportations have been, how do I say it? Where deportations don't sit super good inside of me as a mental health professional looking at this cultural experience. Um, the number one thing is the humanity of it. Look, a bad person, a person who is a terrible, no good, awful human being, should still, in my opinion, be treated with humanity. Because if we lose our humanity in dealing with the most perverted, most aggressive and horrible people on the planet, if we lose our humanity in dealing with them, then we are more likely to become them. I'm not interested in doing that. You might think that's a stretch, but it's not. We can vet that out at a later date, but just understand you have to remain true to humanity. I'm going to treat you like a person, not just a problem. Now, you might be a problem, and I might have to deal with the problem, but I'm not going to treat you less than human. I'm not going to treat you like a dog or like a pig or like, I mean, let's be real. Many people treat their dogs and their farm animals better than they treat people, which is also messed up. So deportations, when we go back to this, I would say, number one, keep humanity. And number two, there are rules in place. Make sure they're followed. We put those rules in place around deportation to ensure they have adequate opportunity to prove identity. Now, a lot of people online, I got threatened by some people online because I questioned, I didn't even make a statement. I suggested a question of like, hey, we should make sure that this is, vetted out better. And they were like, "Whoa, hold on. No, you bring them back and then you vet it out." I'm like, well, uh, maybe, maybe somebody vetted it out, right? And I got threats. It was weird. So the deportations piece, when we do it, keep humanity and follow the rules. If we're deporting people, there is a process for it that requires they have the opportunity to present their information, whether that's their identification, their green card, their passport, their whatever. Give them that opportunity. That doesn't mean you have to give them that opportunity without handcuffs on. It means, like, okay, take them to their home and get them their identification. And if the identification says, wow, they really do belong here and they haven't broken a law, then let them go. Pretty simple. If they've broken the law, then you can detain them in jail. If they have not broken the law and they are here illegally, then they can be deported. Right? Meaning they would have no identification that allows them to be here in a legal status. Those people could be deported. Okay, I'm hoping all of this is tracking, because there's really no new information. There's just new stories, which is why we go down this path of humanity and follow the rules. Why? Because we've done this before and it works. We've also not done this before. And that is part of that history and the present. The only significant difference is it hasn't been done in the previous administration. It's not that it hasn't been done before. It just wasn't being done in the previous administration. So we're getting all these new stories, but based on an old process. Make sure it doesn't lose humanity at all, ever. And give them the opportunity to prove their case if they have it. And if they don't, that's on them. Sorry, folks. You can do what you want with it, but there's rules in place. Boundaries, you can go back and listen to my other podcasts on boundaries. Boundaries exist as a way of improving relationships. If you know where a person stands, then you can choose to be respectful and loving and kind, or you can choose to be disrespectful. That's an option. And if you choose that, well, then bye-bye. You got to go. We got to love you from a distance. It doesn't mean I stop treating you with humanity. It just means I'm going to love you from a greater and greater distance. And in this case, it's a country that is holding a boundary, and the distance, the appropriate distance, is outside of our country's boundary lines. In other words, not here. That's actually good practice. What it does is it encourages other countries to follow your boundary. Of course, the bad news is we weren't holding our own stated boundary for the last 4 years and at other times in our history. And so other countries are rightfully confused by, well, which one is it there, America? Is it, you believe that, to come into your country, you have to have legal rights to be there? Or is it's a free-for-all and we can just walk right in? Of course they're confused. But we reestablish the boundary and say, no, we actually meant that our boundary means it's a boundary. And then we're good to go. It will change everything. So once we do that, though, folks, if we don't hold that boundary in the future, we're going to be right back here again at some point, which is exactly what we see when we look back at that symbolic interactionism. In that past, we've seen times where we've held the boundary, times where we didn't, and they're going to create turmoil in our relationships. Wow, what do we have? Turmoil in our relationships. Why? Because it looks like a dramatic shift. Folks, I introduced only 2 theories here, but I'd love for you to explore them and let me know what you think. I hope this was helpful. Look, the theory is only good if we can apply it to current situations, right? So please take a look at it. Let me know what you think. I appreciate you joining us. Like, subscribe, do all those things, and we'll see you again soon. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. We appreciate our audience a lot, so we give you some simple ways to track us down. Please like, subscribe, and follow all the podcasts on different platforms, but you can also email us at healthyperspectives@protonmail.com, or you can check out our website at healthy-perspectives.com/podcast. It's a backward slash. So if you want to go to our landing page, if you go to healthy-perspectives.com, you'll still find us. You just got to click on the podcast button. Thank you so much.